presidential election. This was the front runner for the Republican nomination. He sat down with a local but hard-nosed, aggressive reporter, and the candidate totally blew it. Just fell right on his face. What does this remind you of?
Can you name the president of Chechnya?
No, can you?
Name the president of Taiwan?
Yeah, Lee.
Can you name the general who's in charge of Pakistan?
Is this a 50 questions?
No, it's 4 questions of 4 leaders and 4 hotspots.
The new Pakistani general has just been elected. He's not elected. This guy took over office. He appears he's going to bring stability to the country, and I think that's good news for the subcontinent.
And you can name him.
General. I can't name the general.
And it's
General.
Finally, I asked Bush to identify the leader of India's government.
And the Prime Minister of India?
The new Prime Minister of India is, no.
Which led to this.
Can you name the Foreign Minister of Mexico?
No, sir. No, sir, but I would say to that I'm not running for president, and I don't
understand.
I
understand, but the point I say to you is that, you know, if what you're suggesting is that what I'm suggesting to you is if you can't name the Foreign Minister of Mexico, therefore, you know, you're not capable about what you do. But the truth of the matter is you are, whether you can or not.
Truth of the matter is you is. Does that remind you of anybody at all?
Are you ready for the gotcha questions? They're coming from the media and others on foreign policy.
I'm ready for the gotcha questions, and they are already starting to come. And when they ask me who's the president of Ubeckie, Beckie, Stan, I'm going to say, you know, I don't know. Do you know?
Can you name the president of Chechnya?
No, can you?
People say it is impossible that the Herman Cain Art Project could result in a Republican presidential nomination, but why not?
So you agreed with President Obama on Libya or not?
Okay, Libya. I do not agree with the way he handled it for the following reason. No, that's a different one.
And the Prime Minister of India?
The new Prime Minister of India is, no.
In the year 2000, people apparently did not care about picking a guy who had foreign policy chops. Today, President Obama made his first trip to Australia as president, and he made the surprise announcement there that 250 U.S. Marines are going to be stationed there starting next year. Eventually, 2,500 American troops are going to be rotated through Australia. President Obama says it will be a permanent outpost for us.
We are here to stay. This is a region of huge strategic importance to us.
The posting of U.S. Marines in Australia is being seen as a brushback to China, essentially asserting America's place in that very far-flung part of the world. Now, whether sending the Marines to Australia seems to you like a bad use of the U.S. military or a great use of the U.S. military, that move today did afford the opportunity in our domestic politics for the Republican Party's presidential hopefuls to show off their own foreign policy chops.
I'm the only candidate that's running right now that is currently engaged in foreign policy.
Michelle Bachmann. You know, in their infinite wisdom, the Republican Party in the House did decide to put Michelle Bachmann on the Intelligence Committee this year. And so as a candidate, she is trying to use that to claim foreign policy expertise, letting Iowa voters know today that she is Johnny on the spot when it comes to all the latest on foreign policy.
I heard a story on the local station here that Obama was sending troops to Australia. Yeah, that's what I heard.
Are you kidding? For what reason?
I don't know. He's doing that.
Well, now that's okay. I'm sorry I can't tell you because I don't know what that reason is, but I will definitely look into that.
Michelle Bachmann currently, I guess, looking into it. Do you remember at the dawn of Rick Perry? Part of the reason we knew that Rick Perry was getting into the race for president was that they kept leaking that Rick Perry was meeting with foreign leaders, remember? In his capacity as Texas governor, of course, he happened to need to meet with the former president of Pakistan, Pervez Musharraf, also with the Prime Minister of Latvia. Rick Perry looks like governor of Texas, but in actuality, he's an international statesman. It actually seemed like Rick Perry himself believed that enough to really try to go for it on foreign policy at first in the debates. That overconfidence, however, just led to tragedies like this one.
Governor Perry, if you were president and you got a call at 3 a.m. telling you that Pakistan had lost control of its nuclear weapons at the hands of the Taliban, what would be your first move?
Well, obviously, before you ever get to that point, you have to build a relationship in that region. And that's one of the things that this administration has not done. Yesterday, we found out through Admiral Mullen that Haqqani has been involved with, and that's the terrorist group directly associated with the Pakistani country. So to have a relationship with India, to make sure that India knows that they are an ally of the United States. For instance, when we had the opportunity to sell India the upgraded F-16s, we chose not to do that.
So if Rick Perry were president, he got the 3 a.m. phone call saying Pakistan has lost control of its nuclear weapons, he would make sure that we sold India some F-16s, which we already did. Whatever Rick Perry meant about what is associated with the Pakistani country, the other candidates realized in that moment, this is when Rick Perry was flying high, the other candidates realized that this could be an opportunity to seize an advantage over Rick Perry. Here was Rick Santorum making his move.
To answer the question on Pakistan, which I'm not too sure was answered.
Rick Santorum here, very excited. He's going in on Rick Perry, because Rick Perry didn't make any sense on Pakistan. So you can see Rick Santorum has come up with his own answer on this, and he's going to hit a home run where Rick Perry has just struck out. You can see the gleam in his eye. He's super excited. He's going in.
We should be establishing relationships in Pakistan with allies of ours, folks like relationships with President Musharraf, who we had in the past, with others in that country. So if in fact something like that would occur, we could work in concert to make sure that coup could be overturned and make sure that those nuclear weapons do not fall into those hands.
Rick Santorum, therefore, saying that if he got the call at 3 a.m. that Pakistan has lost control of its nukes, he would call the former president of Pakistan, President Musharraf, the former, I think, who's now in Texas now, meeting with guys like Rick Perry. Rick Santorum, when he was in the Senate, was on the Intelligence Committee. Michelle Bachmann is still on the Intelligence Committee, which is amazing. Rick Perry did apparently have some fixer hook him up with a meeting with the Prime Minister of Latvia and Pervez Musharraf. These guys have tried to develop some expertise on foreign policy. It is just not really working out this year.
Yes. Do you view China as a potential military threat to the United States?
Yes, they're a military threat. They've indicated that they're trying to develop nuclear capability.
For the record, China is not trying to develop nuclear capability. They have had nuclear weapons since 1964. The Herman Cain campaign has tried to deal with their foreign policy problem every time it manifests, using a few different strategies. At one point, his campaign told the Daily Caller website that Mr. Cain was going to get better at foreign policy because he was getting a one-page briefing on foreign policy issues almost every day. A full page. Almost every day. But when things did not get any better, despite that extensive briefing, instead of trying to explain it away and make people try to not worry about it, they have now tried to turn this into an asset. Mr. Cain telling the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel after his interview, in which he didn't seem to know what Libya was, he telling the Journal-Sentinel, quote, "I'm not supposed to know anything about foreign policy." To be fair, Mr. Cain also says that about things other than foreign policy. He also says now that he is not supposed to really know much about much.
I'm often criticized about the fact that I've never held public office. I'm criticized that I don't know this and I don't know that and I don't know that and I don't know this. You know, a leader doesn't have to know everything.
I don't think I have to try to prove this anymore. I think the evidence is overwhelming. Can we just concede that we agree on this? No, you need more? Okay, watch.
Would you favor a military strike against Iran to stop that country from developing nuclear capability?
That's not a practical, top-tier alternative, and here's why. Okay. If you look at the topography of Iran, where are you going to strike? It's very mountainous. That's what makes it very difficult.
See, the American military needs flatness. If there isn't flatness, we can't do anything. Bumpy areas, steepness is very peaceful. Has to be. Mr. Kaine went on to say that he would consult with... Actually, just play it. Just play it. Go on.
For the United States to unilaterally go in and attack Iran to try and stop them, I would want to consult with the intelligence community, the commanders on the ground in that part of the world.
Before attacking Iran, Herman Cain would want to consult with America's military commanders on the ground in Iran. See, they must be in the flat part. Today at a campaign stop in Miami, Herman Cain asked, "How do you say delicious in Cuban?" In what? In Cuban, he asked. All right, the common wisdom right now about the weakness of the Republican field on the issue of foreign policy and all things foreign is that it doesn't matter very much. This isn't going to be a foreign policy election, so who really cares if Rick Perry can't tell Pakistan from Pashmina? Who really cares if these guys cannot tell Beckie from 999? Although today Herman Cain did try to make it nueve, 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 which is awesome. And also, I'm just saying, I win. The other reason there's no generalized alarm about this in the Republican field, I think, is because the common wisdom is that Republican candidates, no matter how individually idiotic they may appear on any particular day on international issues, they can sort of count on the Republican Party having a good brand on national security and foreign policy. That is the Beltway common wisdom, but that common wisdom may be changing. The New York Times today quoting Republican foreign policy heavyweights who are not pleased with this crop of Republican candidates and all the stuff they keep screwing up on foreign issues. A former George W. Bush national security official telling the Times, quote, "This is the core of the Republican brand. You mess with it at your peril. Republicans should be concerned about this." A former White House counsel for the first President Bush saying, quote, "People are taking all this stuff in stride, but at some point it accumulates. At some point the public picks up on it." Ronald Reagan's former chief of staff saying, quote, "Honestly, the Republican debates have become a reality show. People have to be perceived as being capable of governing this country." Now that we are less than 2 months out from the voting in Iowa, candidates trying to get themselves into the top tier or trying to keep themselves in the top tier are realizing they do have to make some gesture towards seriousness on foreign policy. They have to make some gesture towards not being laughably ignorant on foreign policy. And so they are starting to go after each other on this. Newt Gingrich saying about Herman Cain on a conservative radio show today, quote, "I think it's fairly important in a dangerous world to have a president who knows something about foreign policy." Take that, Mr. I don't need to know anything about foreign policy. I think it is at least encouraging that Mr. Gingrich is trying to say that foreign policy matters. That said, glass house, throwing stones. Newt Gingrich this year, you will remember, went from demanding U.S. intervention in Libya before President Obama made that decision to totally reversing his position and insisting that we should not do that once President Obama decided what we should do.
What would you do about Libya?
Exercise a no-fly zone this evening. Communicate to the Libyan military that Gaddafi was gone. This is a moment to get rid of him. Do it. Get it over with. I would not have intervened. I think there were a lot of other ways to affect Gaddafi. I would not have used American and European forces.
Newt Gingrich is trying to sound like the serious guy on foreign policy, but like all of the other Republican candidates this year, he has not exactly distinguished himself on this. In order to seem like a serious candidate, you have to seem like you can handle some basics of foreign policy. That's why it's important for the likely nominee, Mitt Romney, to seem serious on this issue as well. But Mitt Romney, it turns out, for all his perceived seriousness, is just as bad as the rest of them on basic foreign policy issues. ABC News recently adding up all of Mitt Romney's positions on the issue just of Libya. They ended up with a grand total of 5. First, it was that President Obama didn't act fast enough. Then Mitt Romney decided that he would go totally silent on the issue. No comment at all. Then Mr. Romney argued that Mr. Obama was being too aggressive in Libya. Then Mitt Romney cheered Mr. Obama's aggressiveness after Gaddafi was toppled. And then finally, Mitt Romney returned to one of his original positions, which is that President Obama didn't act fast enough. The response so far to anybody who might question whether or not Mitt Romney knows anything about foreign policy, he's never worked in foreign policy in his life, the response from the Republican establishment is essentially, don't worry. He's surrounding himself with a great foreign policy team. That's what they said about George W. Bush, too. In the case of Mitt Romney, though, the great foreign policy team that Mitt Romney is loading up with are foreign policy advisors from the last Republican administration, which would be the administration of George W. Bush. Because if there's one thing the American people think of when they want to be comforted about foreign policy expertise, naturally it's the administration of George W. Bush.
Can you name the president of Chechnya?
No, can you?
And the prime minister of